Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here, and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today it's time to take a look at the 2026 Airfix Club package. So join me as I get stuck inside this box and see what we've got. So starting off on the outside, the club package comes in the familiar red boxing, which we have seen for a number of years now. I think since like 2020 when they kind of reformulated the club package. So let's get this one open. We don't need to linger too long on the outside here. Because I'm working with limited space at the moment, so let's see what we've got. Ooh. There we go. There we go. Right. So we should have a letter. That's a good place to start. A letter usually tells you what you should have included. So here is the letter. So dear Airfix Club member, welcome to the Airfix Club. Talks about the different benefits. There are benefits you get from being a member of the club, and it's like on their website. You can get like discount on their web store, etc. But ultimately what it's telling us is we should have a model kit, which is here. We should have some stickers. Okay, I can't see any stickers. I'll have a look in a minute. A flying hours passport, which is there. That's a little book. We'll look at that in a second. A poster, which is this one here. And a keyring, which is a new design, and a pin badge, and a door hanger. There we go. So I'll just have a look for the stickers. Make sure I've not left them in the box. Just going to make sure they're not stuck. Oh, there they are. There we go. I've had it before where things haven't been included. Things have been missing. So we've got everything by the looks of it. Our Airfix stickers, the sort of current logo they're using. Just a normal sticker, stick it on things. We have, get that out of the way, our pin badge. The pin badges are normally quite nice. You can see it's an enamel pin badge. It's got 2026 on the side and the Airfix logo on the back as well. So, you know, if you're a collector of the club stuff, you can collect your badges. And a do not disturb door hanger. And welcome, come on in, let's talk about modelling. And a little logo for Models for Heroes down there, who they support. We have our assembly required tag. This is the same kind of thing you get on aircraft to remove from probes and stuff before flight. And this is for this year's version, which is the Swedish Airforce. And then we also have our flying hours passport. I've already done a video about how the passport and the flying club, the flying hours scheme works. So feel free to take a look at that one. I know some people think this is a free one. Technically it isn't. You have to stick one over the top of that. But I have heard that Airfix have honoured it if someone missed one. So just be aware that you are meant to stick a flying hour over the top. It's just showing you where you stick them. But you can only redeem flying hours if you are a member of the club. Unless you send them to Models for Heroes, who can redeem it on your behalf for their charitable work and get kits sent out to them. So this is our poster for this year. It talks to us about the Swedish Airforce. It's their 100th year anniversary, 1926 to 2026. So this is what they're commemorating, which I think is quite nice. It's quite nice that Airfix commemorates other like non-UK forces and aviation history, which is quite nice. We have information about the DeHavilland Tiger Moth and the Viggen over here on the right. That's quite a nice little leaflet / poster. It's on a little bit thinner paper than normal, which is a bit of a shame, but you know, it is what it is. And then we have this year's kit. So this year's kit is the DeHavilland Tiger Moth and the Viggen. And starting off on the outside, you can see that it's quite a nice little boxing, really. You've got nice artwork on the front. It's 1/72 scale, and down here we have an item code of A73018. On this side here, you can see we've got safety warning information. It says that this has cartograph decals, so they should be to a good quality. We have a Saab logo, so I presume they've got some element of licensing in there. And we have tooling information. Airfix is quite good at putting their tooling information on their boxes. The Tiger Moth is one of their kind of newer toolings, so it dates from 2013. However, the Viggen is an old tooling from 1971, which I always think it's a bit weird when they put an old tooling bundled in with a new tooling. But I suppose they really wanted to highlight this event and they didn't have an appropriate or new tooling for that. So they've gone with the 1971 version. All of the schemes and the artwork we see here was designed in 2025, but naturally it wasn't released until 2026. If we flip over onto this edge, you can see information about the actual aircraft schemes which are included. This one is a Tiger Moth from 1935, and we have some dimensions: a length of 102 millimeters, a width of 124, and there are 42 parts included for the Tiger Moth. Then we also have the Viggen, and this is one from 2000, and the dimensions here again: 226 mils, 145 mil in length, width, and 67 parts included. There are a number of different color callouts here from the Humble range, and a skill level. So the skill level in this particular instance, it's saying that it's a skill level 2, so it shouldn't be too hard to build. No flying hour coupons are included on these boxes, I suppose because they think you're already a member of the club. There isn't any point. You can see the box has bulged slightly, so I'm guessing there's quite a lot of stuff in here to make it fit. I do think it's good value when they put 2 kits in a club package, but as we've just discussed, we do have a slightly older tooling for the Viggen. So here we are, we've got plastic parts. The Tiger Moth appears to be in yellow and the Viggen is in red, but we will look at the instructions first, as that's where I like to begin. So on the outside, we can see some information about the aircraft that have been selected for this boxing, and a few little hints and tips down the bottom. Turn over the page, we have some information about your build and also the key to the different symbols you're going to encounter. Then we move on to the assembly instructions, and if you've done the Tiger Moth before, this will look awfully familiar to you. We do have elements of cockpit that need to be built up, and we have crew figures. If you want to have your little doors open, you need to cut parts away, and there are holes here to drill out in order to facilitate that. So these are the options down here. It's the same on both sides of the fuselage, and then as we turn over, we install our little cockpit parts, and there are decals for our control panels. The propeller assembly can be constructed here. If you're careful with your cement, you should have a freely rotating prop, and there is like an engine exhaust component which goes inside of there as well, which then gets added onto our fuselage, and then the lower wing surface added. This component, I believe this is a fuel tank, gets added at the top of the wing. We then have struts which are glued in, and you'll notice that it does have like the formers attached in these struts, so you can cut them away after you've put them in place. It creates like a good spacer for them. Attach your wings, attach your tail surface and the support struts and the tail skid and the vertical tail surface, then the landing gear struts and the landing gear wheels. Then there are some clear parts for the windscreen, and then that's pretty much it. At this point, they're just telling you to remove the sort of spacers for your struts. Rigging diagram is provided. I'm not a massive fan of the rigging. I find it a bit difficult, not going to lie, but it doesn't look overly complicated, so I would like to think it could be relatively straightforward, but no rigging is included. Then we have our painting instructions, which are in full color, which is nice to see. It does look like it could be relatively straightforward to paint, but I would probably be tempted to paint elements of it before gluing it together. We have red and yellow, and then our roundels are decals, and I think this tail surface here is a decal as well. And yeah, that's not too bad. Not looking overly complicated, but it should make a nice looking aircraft. And this is a 1935 aircraft. This then brings us on to the Viggen's instructions, same format that we've seen previously, but it is a little bit older given the fact that this is an older tooling, so we don't have quite the same design style. They have tried to update it ever so slightly to make it a little bit more consistent, but as you can see, it's not quite up to the same standard as the Tiger Moth. We do again have a crew figure though, which gets glued into a seat. This goes inside of the aircraft, and then we have air intakes, nose cone and engine exhausts being added. I would probably add some nose weight. It doesn't make reference to nose weight, but I probably would add some if you're going to have it wheels down. We add our front canards, the air brakes. I presume the air brakes could be glued in an open position. That's why they are separate, but it doesn't tell you that you can do that. The vertical tail surface gets glued on, and then we have our wing surfaces which get glued together and then added onto the fuselage. Coming onto the landing gear, this is quite cluttered. There's a lot going on. We have our landing gear wheels and legs, which come as a single, no they don't, they come as separate parts which get glued together and then added into their holes. We then have landing gear bay covers. And if you wanted to display that in the raised position, you can do so. That option has been designed into the kit. We have then moved on to the front landing gear, which again, you could raise or lower depending on your preference. Then we come to underwing stores. So there are a number of different things that can be added here. And there is one which we'll talk about in a minute, which I already know about. And then we come on to canopy. It looks as though maybe you could position the canopy in an open position, given that we have this one as a separate part, but it's not explicitly indicated that you can do that. And then we come to our painting instructions, which is the 2000, I think it was like almost like a display show aircraft, and it's all in red primarily. And you can see actually down here, bottom right or middle right, it says that there's no centerline tank included. It was not part of the tooling. It was never included as part of the tooling, and Airfix have gone, well, we need to fix that problem. So the solution to this is if you have a 3D printer, you can download and print out the centerline tank, which is exactly what I've done. So I printed a couple out just to be safe. What you can see here, these are the support. These are the support strut things. They go along the center line, and I've printed them out in a sort of bluey color, which I'll paint. And then this is the actual tank here. This is the fuel tank. So I've printed these out. Now, I understand the issue with this is that it's frustrating if a modeler doesn't have access to a 3D printer. It would be nice if these had been included in the kit so that people didn't have to create them separately. But it's better than nothing. There are manufacturers out there who will provide you a basic kit and then offer you STL files if you've got a 3D printer to upgrade certain elements like the seats and the cockpits, etc. However, I understand it is frustrating when you don't have access to a 3D printer. I naturally do, so I've been able to print out the relevant parts, and I wonder if maybe you know someone who might be able to print them out for you, but unfortunately for someone who doesn't have a 3D printer, they are kind of in a position where they haven't got access to certain parts which they might want to include. So I think providing STL files is a solution. Maybe it's not the best solution, but it is kind of better than nothing. Right, so those are the instructions. Let us now look at the decals. So it's not a very big sheet of decals. We have on here our ghosts and the text. We have control panels for the Tiger Moth, and then we have other insignia. There is a little bit of, it's almost like dust on the surface, but that's come off, that's fine. You'll notice that all of them are on the same decal sheet. So the Tiger Moth has these ones, and then the Viggen has all of these. They're printed to a nice quality, not overly thick. They're silkscreen printed by Cartograph, so they should go on really nicely. Generally, I don't have any problems with them. So there, they look pretty good. Let's now move on to the actual plastic parts, and we'll take a look at the Tiger Moth. I don't want to linger too long because this will just be the standard kit that has been in production many times, and I actually have more Tiger Moths to look at as well. So clear parts, I'm not going to get them out. Clear parts are in this bag. You can see both windscreens are there. They look to be molded to a good quality, and the panel lines look like, or the framework rather, would be easy enough to mask. However, I know someone or a couple of manufacturers do actually make aftermarket aftermarket masks for that. So, you know, if you want to spend a little bit extra money and get it nice and accurate, you can do that. Then we have our plastic parts molded in yellow, which is an interesting choice. Personally, I would have just gone with grey. I get that they're trying to be a little bit more fun, maybe hark back to how things were in the olden days, but actually I don't really like this. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to paint over the top. But, you know, it is what it is. We have our wing surfaces, which are quite nicely represented. It's a bit hard to see the details and things in this yellow plastic, but we do have recessed panel lines. The fine details are moulded to a good quality, but there is a little bit of flash in a few places. The plastic is relatively dense, a slight greasy feel to it, which might need a little bit of cleaning up. Ejector pin marks are on this side and don't appear to be anywhere visible. It's a reasonably clean looking tooling for the most part. On this one we have our fuselage parts. You can see we've got some nice detail on the inside there, and tail surfaces and other smaller details. Here are our struts with those sort of spacers which you need to cut away after installation. Again, a little bit of flash in a few places which will just need a little bit of cleaning up, but on the most part this is looking quite nice. Then we come on to the final sprue, which has our crew figures. This one isn't, is missing some of his legs, so I presume that's to fit in a specific chair because there isn't enough space otherwise. I think that's the lower wing surface, has nice level of detail on it there. Yeah, it's okay. It's a nice enough looking tooling, isn't it? Not overly complicated, generally quite crisp, but a little bit of flash in a few places that might need cleaning up. Then we have the older 1970s tooling for our Viggen. So let's get that one open and have a look at what we've got inside of here. This one is molded in red plastic. And our clear parts, there you go, you've just got 2 in the bag. I will get that out for sanity's sake, because I probably won't see a Viggen again. We have our clear parts, some slight scuffs in there, but I think that's probably due to the age of the tooling. This would be a vintage classic kit if Airfix were to release it in their normal range. There is some flash which will need cleaning up. Not the worst clear parts I've seen. A little bit frustrating about the sort of scuffs on the plastic, but I suppose that's probably a result of the age of the tooling. And it doesn't help when you drop it on the desk either. Then we have molded in red plastic, which again, I would have just gone for grey. We have effectively 4 sprues, which, they don't look terrible. The mold quality is reasonable. The plastic is more dense, I would say, than the yellow. Only slightly greasy feel to it, so not terrible. Given that this is a 70s tooling, we can expect to see raised panel lines, which gives you a bit of a inconsistency between the 2 styles of kit. We have a reasonable level of detail, and then what's this? This is a fuselage half. There is some scuffs and some flash in places which will need cleaning up. It does look like they've done a little bit of tidying up on the tooling, but you can see there's like scratches and things in the plastic from the age of the kit. It would have been nice to have seen this as a new tooling rather than the old one regurgitated. On this sprue here, we do have our missiles and things, but I think primarily for this kit, you would only need the under centerline fuel tank, which is a bit of a frustration. But maybe I'll add the missiles and things when I do mine, just because they're included. Flash isn't too bad. A little bit flash in a few places, but on the whole, not terrible. Here's the pilot in his little pose, looking to the left. He looks quite happy there, doesn't he? I think that's part of the engine there. And wheels, moderate. It's just a bit of a inconsistency, I would say. You look at the Tiger Moth and you go, oh, that's a nice looking kit, and then you look at this one and it's not quite up to the same standard. Ejector pin marks are on some of the parts on this side, so there's going to be a little bit of cleaning up to do. It's just a little bit untidy. It's a vintage tooling. I mean, that's what we were kind of going to expect. No internal detail for the cockpit there. These are our wing surfaces and the tail surfaces here. Moderately okay. I'd say you're going to get a kit. You're going to get a kit built out of this, aren't you? You're going to get a model that looks like a Viggen. However, I think it probably is worth mentioning that the actual aircraft this is trying to be, I think was like a production version, whereas the kit that was designed in the 70s, so this tooling actually represents a like a prototype version or an early version. So actually this is technically inaccurate for the version they're trying to replicate. I get that they were trying to do something a bit special, trying to do something a little bit fun. I get that some people are not going to be happy because it's technically inaccurate. So it's completely up to you whether you see value in this bespoke limited edition boxing, because that's what it is. It's limited edition at the end of the day. You're not going to necessarily get this unless you get it on the second-hand market or you join to become a member of the club. So let's recap what we had. We had 2 plastic model kits, one of the Viggen, a older 1970s tooling, molded to a moderate quality, but it is an old tooling, so there are going to be problems with it. No drop tank was included, but we did have the option to download and print out, if you have the ability to do so, the relevant drop tank and also the hardpoint pylon for it, which I have done, as I'm very fortunate to do so, but I understand that there would be frustration if you didn't have access to producing that. Of course, though, you do have loads of weapons and things, so you could effectively mix and match what you put on there. The Tiger Moth is a much better quality tooling. I wouldn't have gone with yellow plastic personally, but you know, that's the choice that they've decided to go with. The instructions are to the normal standard from Airfix. You had your Tiger Moth instructions, which are, you know, modern, and then the Viggen ones, which are a little bit dated. Decals, a small sheet of decals, but they seem to be printed to a really nice quality. And then we had all of the bits and pieces from the club kit, and I will just try and get them back onto the screen. Pin badge, poster, Flying Hours Club passport, the door hanger, the stickers, and I think that is pretty much it. Oh no, there was the tag as well. So the Airfix Club then. The Airfix Club is an extra thing you can sign up to on their website, and if you are in the UK, you would get a year's membership for £35 and you would get this boxing here. If you're not in the UK, you would have to get the rest of the world option, which gives you £15 and you would get access to the club online. However, you would then have to pay an extra £25, so it's a little bit more expensive, to get the red boxing contents that we saw here. You could only get the red boxing contents if you were a member of the club, and you would have to pay your club membership fee effectively up front. I think it's to do with shipping. I don't know. You'd have to speak to Airfix about that. So naturally, if you're overseas, it might not be quite as good value as it might be for us here in the UK. And personally, I was in two minds whether to get this or not this year. I don't think that this is something that I would probably have bought myself if I wasn't making a review on it. It's not something that potentially quite interests me. It's not exactly my bag, but I understand that obviously other people do like this. I don't think it's a bad idea from Airfix to explore different topics. I think maybe mix and matching an old and a new tooling wasn't quite the right choice, but I appreciate that they didn't have a different tooling to do that with, and it was probably a bit prohibitive to design a new tooling just for this boxing. So for me personally, I think that this is okay. I think that I like the idea of the Swedish Airforce 100 years, and I know that there are going to be people who enjoy that. I do like that they have two kits in the box, which makes it much better value. But in my own opinion, I think that there have been some boxings in previous years which may have been a little bit stronger. But you know, if you don't like it, you don't have to buy it. And this is the thing with companies, if you don't want something from them, you don't have to support them by opening your wallet. And if this does hold value to you, then absolutely feel free to put one in your basket. And with that, I'm going to end this one here. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of my unboxing and if my assessment of this kit was fair. Don't forget that we do have a Model Minutes Model Club, and if you'd like to get early access to videos and other perks, check out the links in the description. Massive thanks to these Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. There are other ways to help support the channel, however, and full information is again below the video. The best way to support the channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.